And maybe Faye will continue to serenade, maybe she won't. Who knows? We're gonna roll with it though. I have appeased her with some catnip, so hopefully that will keep her content while I'm filming. Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erin. I'm a writer, a content creator, and a visual storyteller. I'm so glad to have you visiting my channel today. It has been a little while since I've done this type of video. I have a mini series called Tea with Me, and I'll sometimes do a Q&A or little updates. And today I'm going to be doing some bookish updates along with some bookish Q&A. A few weeks ago, I put out on my Instagram stories for you all to ask me what bookish questions you wanted me to answer, and I am going to be answering those questions in this video today. Go ahead and brew yourself a cozy beverage. I'm gonna insert some B-roll of me making this cup of tea. So without further ado, let's just dive right into the video. Today I have made an Earl Grey with some oat milk. It is a little overcast and it was really rainy this morning, so Earl Grey with some milk feels like the right choice for my cozy beverage this morning. I will occasionally be glancing off screen just because I have my notes set up here, and I'd first like to start with my bookish updates. So first of all, I wanted to, that was a little loud. I wanted to talk about the books that I'm currently reading. I tend to have a habit of starting several books and then getting partway through them, and then I'll kind of put them to the side, and then I'll pick up a new book, and then the other ones just sort of sit on my currently reading shelf for months and months and months. So one thing that I'm trying to do this year is, if I have a book sitting on my currently reading shelf that I haven't been actively reading for a while and I'm not feeling in the mood to read it anytime soon, I have now created a temporary DNF list. So not that I'm quitting those books forever, I'm just setting them aside for the time being, and I intend to come back to them. So now at the moment I have 4 books that I'm actively currently reading, truly currently reading, and I'm at different points in each of these books. The first one I'm going to talk about is the book that we are reading for the Lovely and Cozy Book Club on Fable, and that is Wayward by Amelia Hart. We are going to be finishing up this book at the end of this month, May, and starting next month, we will be switching to American Mermaid by Julia Langbein. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. Based on feedback, we have been switching between books every 2 months. So this was our book for April and May, and this will be our book for June and July, so our summer reading. And I have really been enjoying Wayward quite a bit. I am still finishing it up, but I am really enjoying the story. I really like the 3 main characters and the interconnectedness. I love the descriptions. I love the setting in this story. And it's just been a really enjoyable atmospheric read. I will say that there are some content warnings with this story, so if you are, someone who doesn't like to read about domestic violence or abuse, definitely look up the content warnings before you pick up this book. but I do feel that the author handled those sensitive topics really respectfully and focuses on the character's resilience. I do recommend this book, but just with the caveat that look up the content warnings before you pick it up. The next book that I am currently reading is one that I picked up earlier this year, and that is Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney. This is a nonfiction book. I am purposely reading this one slow and steady because I'm really, really enjoying learning about the authors that influenced and inspired Jane Austen, who some of them were born before her, some of them were born around the same time as her, but they were her literary peers. And I love the way that Rebecca Romney puts together the research that she did, what she discovered about all of these female authors who are not in the canon of literature, whereas Jane Austen is. It's just so enjoyable. I think because I studied English in college, this just delights my little literary heart. And I also just love Rebecca Romney's writing style. She delivers this information in a way that's entertaining and really enjoyable to read. Sort of like a memoir, sort of research, but it almost feels like a little bookish adventure. That's how I feel when I read it, at least. Really enjoying this one and purposely reading it slowly because I want to savor each and every chapter. So highly, highly recommend Jane Austen's Bookshelf by Rebecca Romney if you're into nonfiction, female authors, and of course, if you love Jane Austen, definitely pick this one up. Take a little sip of my tea because I think it's cool enough now. I love Earl Grey. I tend to drink black teas in the morning, and later in the day I'll do like a herbal tea. I think that Earl Grey is probably my favorite black tea. I love the flavors. I love the little citrus note. I love the bergamot. And then just add a little bit of non-dairy milk to it, and I am a happy, happy lady. The next book that I'm currently reading that I'll be sharing is actually an audiobook, and it's The Awakening by Nora Roberts. This one I'm not very far into. I have only gotten a few chapters in, but I'm really enjoying it. And this is actually my very first Nora Roberts novel. I'm shocked that I've not read one of her many books until now. But this book was recommended to me by my best friend Jamie. The prologue of the story is set in Ireland, presumably, but it's not totally clear, at least where I am in the story. And so I think there's going to be this portal fantasy element, and I'm really, really excited to continue reading and see where the story leads. Even with the tiny bit that I've read so far, I'm really enjoying it. The fourth and final book that I am actively currently reading is a little bit embarrassing to talk about because I've been reading A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles for over a year now. I feel like I picked this up last maybe April or May. I don't remember exactly when I started reading it. I'll insert the date on the screen here once I go back and look at my reading log. I'm just a little over halfway. Now, I am really, truly enjoying this book. It's not taking me this long to read it because I'm not enjoying it. I initially started reading the physical copy. Then I thought, oh, maybe I'll switch back and forth between the physical copy and the audiobook for when I'm doing things when I can't actually have the book in front of me. I really liked the narrator's voice, and there's some books that I really enjoy reading the physical copy while listening to the audiobook. I don't know why, but this book is one of those instances. And so it's taking me a long time to get through it because I obviously own this copy, this physical copy, but I'm borrowing the audiobook through the Libby app. and A Gentleman in Moscow is a very popular book. And so I will start reading it and get through a little bit of it, and then I'll run out of borrow time. And so then I have to go back on the wait list to borrow it again. And that has happened several times. But I really, really love this story. I love the main character. I love the historical fiction aspect of this story. And I love seeing how this character evolves over the course of the years that he is living in a hotel under house arrest, essentially. And he's watching the city and his country change over the years, and yet he is staying in the same place. It's so clever. And this was also recommended to me by a friend, my friend Lauren. And I'm so grateful that she recommended it to me. And I feel so terrible that it's taking me over a year to read this book. But I am dedicating time to reading this book each week so that I can make steady progress and actually finish it, hopefully within the next month or two. Yeah, if you like historical fiction, I definitely recommend this book, A Gentleman in Moscow, because it's just really well done. So that's my embarrassing story behind this very long, currently reading book. Lastly, for bookish updates, I just wanted to share my current reading status for my annual reading goal. So as of right now, I have read 17 of 52 books for this year, and I'm really quite proud of that. I was definitely going through a bit of a reading slump, but this month has been a really good reading month for me. March was a really good reading month for me as well. The halfway point of 2025 will be the beginning of July. So as long as I read another, what would I need? 9 books? Is that correct? Let me do some math really quickly. Yes, 9 books. If I can read 9 more books by the beginning of July, then I'll be on track for finishing 52 books by the end of this year. I feel good about that. And of course, you know, there are some months that I've read only a few books, and then there's other months like March and this month, May, I've read so many more books. And not all of the books that I read are really long. Some of them are short. I recently finished reading Charlotte's Web by E.B. White, and that was a reread for me, but I hadn't read it since I was a kid, and that was such a delightful reading experience. And it was also the first time that I had read it as an audiobook, and it had a full cast of voice actors, and Meryl Streep was the story's narrator. So it was really, really well done and produced. And yeah, so not all of my books are going to be really long, you know, chapter books like some of the ones that I've already shown you. Some of them are going to be children's books. Some of them are going to be really short stories or books of poetry. And I'd be curious to know in the comments how your annual reading goal is going so far. Do you even have an annual reading goal? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a number of books. Maybe you're wanting to read so many new authors, or you're wanting to read in so many different genres. Let me know in the comments. I'd be really curious to hear about your personal reading goals for 2025. So now we're going to switch over to the bookish Q&A section of this video. And as I said, I put out an Instagram story a few weeks ago requesting questions from you all. So I'm going to be reading off the questions and then answering them. The first question is, what fuels your interest in literature? And when I first read this question, I was wondering, oh, what do you mean by literature? Do you mean literature as in the literary canon? Or do you mean literature as in just books in general? So I'm going to answer it in both ways just because I want to cover all of my bases. I think that my interest in literature, as far as the canon is concerned, is very connected to my college education. I discovered so many of my favorite classic authors like Jane Austen, the Bronte sisters, Charles Dickens, Virginia Woolf, so on and so forth. I discovered them while I was studying. There's a reason that we study these authors and writers and storytellers. I think that for me personally, I really enjoy reading books that are in the canon because they're a little bit more challenging to read. The writing styles are quite often different from modern writers. And also, it's interesting to get almost like a peek into history and see what sort of topics were of interest at that time, or what was some of the criticism of society. I appreciate that in literary canon, you get this insight into the past through stories, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Now, literature, as in just books in general, I like to think of books and reading and literature as like a whole. It's storytelling. And that is something that we as humans have been doing since the beginning of our species. There is archaeological evidence of stories being told through pictographs, something that my wife studies. And I just find it so fascinating how we as a species have been telling stories for centuries. And the way that we tell stories has changed and evolved over time as technology has changed and evolved over time. And I just love the multitude of ways that stories can be told. So to go back to the question, what fuels my interest in literature? It's the magic and the power of storytelling, I think, is ultimately what it is. It is something that connects us with each other, helps us gain more insight into ourselves, helps us imagine all sorts of things, like whether, it's dreaming of a better future or just dreaming up an entirely secondary world. Stories help us connect and help us feel deeply. And yeah, I think that's what fuels my interest in literature and stories. So thank you so much for that question. It definitely was one that got me thinking, and I felt really excited to answer it. Little tea break. So the next question is audiobooks or regular? And I'm assuming by regular you mean physical copies of books. I like both. I also read ebooks occasionally. They're not my first choice. And that's mostly because I love the experience of holding a physical book, feeling the weight of it in my hands, turning the pages. I love the smell of books. This one's a newer used book, so it doesn't have a very distinct smell, but I do have a couple of like really older books, and I especially love the smell of library books because they take on that book smell. If you know what I mean, you know the smell. I just love the sensory experience of reading a physical book. This is probably my favorite way. Like, if I had to choose just one way of reading books for the rest of my life, it would be physical books. But I also really love audiobooks, and I've grown my appreciation of them over the past couple of years because sometimes, like, I believe it was last year when I was reading Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. Yeah, that was the one. I had originally started reading the physical copy, and because it had been a number of years since I'd read a Virginia Woolf novel, I was really struggling to get into her writing style, and I was just struggling to understand what was going on plot-wise. And so I started the book back over, having the audiobook read to me while I'm reading the text visually was helpful because I could catch the change of tone from the voice actor. And so it was like, oh, this is this character's dialogue versus this is narration of the scene or narration of this character's inner thoughts. So that made it a much more enjoyable reading experience for me. I was actually able to just focus on the story and not get so caught up on, okay, what's happening? Who's talking? Is this someone's thoughts? Is this dialogue? Is this description? All of those types of things, which was taking me out of the story. Audiobooks have so many great merits, and I always say, like, don't let anybody tell you that audiobooks don't count as reading, because they absolutely do. And when we were younger, most of us were read to by teachers, parents, adults, babysitters, people who knew how to read before we were taught how to read. So reading doesn't simply mean having a physical book and you're reading it quietly to yourself. Reading is reading aloud. Reading is being read to. Reading is fundamental, as RuPaul would say. So yes, I like both, but if I had to choose just one format for the rest of my life, physical books would be the way I would go. And the last question I'm really excited to answer, it is favorite book to movie. So I mentioned earlier that I absolutely love storytelling, and I love storytelling through film, through television series. I think it's such a cool medium for telling stories, and I quite enjoy seeing how books are adapted to film or television. And I had to think really hard on this question to narrow it down to what is my favorite book to movie adaptation. I started thinking back. The film that introduced me to Jane Austen was the 1995 Sense and Sensibility, starring Emma Thompson and Kate Winslet, and directed by Ang Lee. I hadn't heard of Jane Austen at that point. I hadn't read any of her books. I was only 9 when the film came out. So reading level wise, I would have needed someone to read the book with me and explain all of the nuances of the story at that point. But seeing the film adaptation, I could completely follow what was happening. Now, of course, watching it again as I got older and understood more about that time period and the characters, I picked up on a lot more details. But that film just introduced me to the wondrous world of Jane Austen and her just talent for telling romantic stories with strong female characters and overcoming a lot of like strife, especially in Sense and Sensibility, because Eleanor and Marianne have lost their father, and because they have an older half brother, he is inheriting the entire estate because it's the law. And because they're women, they can't inherit anything, and they are completely dependent upon their older half brother to ensure that they're going to be able to live. And I love the film. It's so beautifully filmed. It's so charming. It's what introduced me to Jane Austen. And I didn't read the book when I was 9, but I ended up reading it in high school. So a few years after seeing the film. But because I had seen the film, I was like, oh, this is the book. I'm really excited to read this. And because I loved the film so much, and then I read the full original book, I felt like I got to see so much more detail and learn so much more about these characters and their world. It was just such a wonderful experience, and I love it that we have adaptations. I think it's important to have different mediums for storytelling because you never know when you might be inspired by a particular story and discover a new author. And those are all the bookish updates and all of the bookish questions that I'll be answering in today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to everyone who submitted a question. It's always really fun to see what sorts of questions you come up with, and it really gets me thinking. So thank you so much for participating. And if you would like to submit questions in a future Q&A video, follow me on Instagram, because that is the easiest place for me to put out a poll asking for questions from you. I would also like to give a special thank you to my supporters over on Ko-fi. It's thanks to you that I'm able to make videos like this and to build the creative career of my dreams. So thank you so much for your support. And just one more reminder that if you would like to join the Lovely and Cozy Book Club on the Fable app, it is completely free. And beginning in June, we're going to be reading American Mermaid by Julia Langmean. And I would love if you joined us in this reading experience. It's such a fun and cozy space. Until next time, I hope you have a lovely and cozy book, and possibly even a beverage to curl up with. Bye-bye. Time for one more sip of tea.